A poor immigrant donated his last $5, shocked to learn it was a life-changing test of kindness that would forever alter the course of his broken dreams. Mihai Popescu clutched the worn $5 bill in his calloused palm, his fingers trembling slightly as the bitter November wind cut through his thin jacket. 3 months in America, and all he had to show for it was this final crumpled note in a mountain of disappointment. The coffee shop window fogged with his breath as he peered inside, watching customers sip from steaming mugs while wrapped in the amber glow of pendant lights. His stomach clenched painfully. No food since yesterday morning, and the rooming house landlord had made it clear, pay by Friday or find somewhere else to sleep. 2 days left. $5 to his name. Mihai pulled his collar higher against the cold and turned away from the temptation of warmth. Downtown Minneapolis had never felt more hostile. The towering buildings like sentinels guarding treasures he couldn't access, dreams he couldn't touch. His English remained fragmented despite his efforts, and the construction job he'd been counting on had evaporated when the project lost funding. The restaurant that had hired him for dishwashing had closed unexpectedly last week. God, please, he whispered in Romanian, his native tongue a comfort on his lips. Show me a path forward. As if in answer, a harsh cough broke through the white noise of traffic. An elderly man huddled in a doorway across the street, a cardboard sign propped beside him. Diabetic. Need medicine. God bless. The man's face was weathered, eyes sunken in a gray face that had seen more than its share of hardship. Mihai's fingers tightened around the $5 bill. He thought of his mother back home, how she'd scrimped and saved to help him get to America, the land of opportunity. Her voice echoed in his memory. Remember who you are, Mihai? Kindness doesn't empty your hands, it fills your heart. Before rational thought could intervene, Mihai crossed the street, navigating between honking cars. He stood before the elderly man, whose roomy eyes lifted slowly to meet his. Sir, Mihai said, the English word still awkward on his tongue. He extended his hand with the $5 bill. Please, for medicine. The old man's weathered hand, spotted with age, reached out hesitantly. Son, you look like you need this more than me. Mihai shook his head firmly. My mother she says, when we give, God gives back. His grammar failed him, but his intention was clear. The old man's fingers closed around the bill, and something shifted in his eyes. A flicker of something Mihai couldn't quite read. What's your name, son? Mihai Popescu. From Romania. The man nodded slowly. Thomas Reeves. Born right here in Minneapolis. He carefully folded the bill and slipped it into his pocket. God bless you, Mihai from Romania. With a tight smile that masked his rising panic, he'd just given away his last dollar in the world. Mihai nodded and turned away. The weight of his decision settled like a stone in his empty stomach as he walked toward the public library. At least there, he could stay warm until closing time. 3 hours later, as darkness fell completely and the library announced its imminent closure, Mihai reluctantly gathered his few belongings, a worn backpack containing spare clothes, his immigration papers, and a dog-eared Romanian English dictionary. The night ahead stretched cold and uncertain. He stepped outside, the frigid air stealing his breath. The street had emptied of commuters, leaving only the occasional passing car and the hollow sound of wind whistling between buildings. Mr. Popescu? Mihai turned, startled by the formal address. A woman in her 50s stood a few feet away, her elegant gray wool coat and leather gloves marking her as someone of means. Beside her towered a serious-looking man in a dark suit. Yes, anxiety crept into his voice. Immigration authorities? Police? His visa was valid, but fear was a constant companion in this foreign land. My name is Eleanor Blackwell. Her smile was tentative but warm. I wonder if you might join me for dinner. I'd like to speak with you about something important. Mihai took a step back, suspicion flaring. I don't understand. I'm sorry for approaching you this way. She reached into her purse and produced a business card, extending it toward him. I run the Blackwell Foundation. Earlier today, you gave $5 to a man named Thomas. Mihai's breath caught. You know this man? Thomas works with me. She hesitated. Mr. Popescu, what you witnessed today was part of a social project we conduct annually, observing how people respond to those in need. Thomas wasn't actually homeless or diabetic. The blood drained from Mihai's face. This was fake? His limited English vocabulary struggled to express his confusion. A test, she corrected gently, and one that thousands of people fail every day. But you, with so little to give, you gave everything. Her voice softened. Would you please join me for dinner? I'd like to return your $5 at the very least. Suspicion warred with desperate hunger. Why? Because kindness should be acknowledged, she replied simply. And because I think we might be able to help each other. 20 minutes later, Mihai found himself seated in a private dining room at an upscale restaurant he would never have dared enter on his own. The warmth enveloped him like an embrace, thawing his frozen fingers and the edges of his wariness. Eleanor Blackwell sat across from him, her shrewd eyes softened by genuine interest as she urged him to order whatever he wanted. Please, she insisted when he hesitated over the menu. You haven't eaten today, have you? Mihai's pride wrestled briefly with honesty before surrendering. No, then choose what appeals to you. While we wait, perhaps you could tell me your story. And so, over bread and water, then soup and a hearty main course that made his eyes widen, Mihai found himself speaking more English than he had in weeks. He told Eleanor about his village outside Bucharest, about his mother's sacrifices, about his father's death 5 years earlier that had left them struggling. He explained his decision to come to America, the construction skills he'd learned working with his uncle, the hopes he'd carried across the ocean, and the reality that had greeted him. And now? Eleanor asked, watching him with those perceptive eyes. What will you do tomorrow? Mihai's fork hesitated on its way to his mouth. Library again. Apply for more jobs. I have 2 days before. He didn't finish. Before your rent is due, she completed, nodding. And how much is that? $300. The sum felt mountainous. Eleanor dabbed her lips with her napkin, then folded her hands on the table. Mr. Popescu, I'd like to make you a proposition. The Blackwell Foundation was established by my late husband to identify and invest in exceptional individuals, people with character, determination, and heart. People precisely like you. Mihai's brow furrowed. I don't understand. We offer opportunity, not charity, she clarified. What we observed today, your willingness to give your last $5 to a stranger in need, that speaks to an exceptional character. The same character my husband believed could transform communities when given the right resources. She reached into her bag and withdrew a folder, placing it on the table between them. This is our cornerstone program. It provides housing, language instruction, job placement, and mentorship for 1 year. In return, participants commit to volunteer work and to eventually pay it forward by helping others in similar circumstances. Mihai stared at the folder, his heart hammering against his ribs. Why me? There are many immigrants, many good people. Yes, Eleanor agreed. But today, you were the one who stopped. Out of hundreds who passed Thomas, you were the only one who gave when giving meant sacrifice. She smiled gently. The Blackwell Foundation believes that kind of character deserves investment. This is real? His voice caught, disbelief warring with a fragile, dangerous hope. Completely real. If you accept, you'll move into foundation housing tomorrow. You'll begin English classes next week, and our employment coordinator will work with you to find a position that matches your construction experience. She paused. The program isn't easy. We expect commitment, hard work, and eventually, contribution back to the community. But you won't face it alone. Mihai's vision blurred unexpectedly. He blinked rapidly, embarrassed by the emotion threatening to overflow. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, Eleanor replied. Take the night to think. Our card has a number. Call tomorrow with your decision. Later, as Eleanor's driver delivered Mihai back to his rooming house, he clutched the folder to his chest like a talisman. Inside his sparse room, he sat on the edge of his narrow bed and opened it with trembling fingers. Brochures, forms, and a sealed envelope fell onto the worn coverlet. He opened the envelope last, gasping softly when 5 crisp $100 bills slipped out, along with a note in elegant handwriting. To cover immediate needs while you decide. This is not the program. This is simply returning kindness for kindness. Ibi. Mihai pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes, overwhelmed. He thought of his mother, of her voice on their last call, strained with worry she tried to hide. He thought of the elderly man, Thomas, and the test he hadn't known he was taking. He thought of Eleanor Blackwell and her foundation, offering not just help but dignity. Sleep came fitfully that night, interrupted by dreams where he was alternately falling into darkness or soaring over sunlit landscapes. By dawn, his decision was made. The Blackwell Foundation's housing turned out to be a modest but immaculately maintained apartment building in a northeast Minneapolis neighborhood. Mihai's unit was small, 1 bedroom with basic furnishings, but to him it felt palatial after the rooming house. Most importantly, it was warm, clean, and his for the next year. The program provides housing and a small stipend, explained Marcus Phillips, the foundation's housing coordinator, as he handed over the keys. A former Marine with close-cropped hair and direct speech, Marcus projected an air of efficiency that Mihai found reassuring. You'll meet with our employment team tomorrow, and language classes start Monday. Any questions so far? Mihai's head spun with the speed of the changes. Yesterday homeless. Today with keys to an apartment. This is very much, he managed. Thank you. Marcus's severe expression softened slightly. Mrs. Blackwell has high hopes for you, Mr. Popescu. She rarely gets this involved with individual participants. The following weeks unfolded in a blur of new routines. Morning English classes with a patient instructor named Sarah, who specialized in working with immigrants. Afternoon meetings with the employment team, reviewing his construction experience and arranging skill assessments. Evenings spent studying vocabulary and practicing pronunciation. Twice weekly, foundation participants gathered for community dinner, where Mihai met others in the program, refugees from Syria and Somalia, immigrants from Mexico and Guatemala, and even a few native-born Americans who had fallen on desperate times. By the third week, the employment team had arranged an interview with Northland Construction, a mid-sized company specializing in commercial renovations. The owner, Jim Hargrove, was an old friend of Eleanor's late husband. So you worked in residential construction in Romania? Jim asked, reviewing Mihai's translated work history. Yes, sir. 5 years with my uncle. We build houses, repair roofs, install... He searched for the word in English. Windows and doors? Fine. Finishing work. Jim supplied, nodding. Listen, your English is still developing, and that can be a safety issue on a site. How about we start you with Sergio's crew? He's our foreman for interior finishing, originally from Argentina. He can help bridge the language gap while you continue your classes. 2 days later, Mihai reported for his first day of work, heart pounding with a mixture of gratitude and terror. The job site was a former warehouse being converted into offices. Sergio, a barrel-chested man with a graying mustache and perpetually dusty work boots, greeted him with rapid Spanish before switching to careful English. Mrs. Blackwell says you have good hands. We will see, yes. Today you watch and help. Tomorrow, maybe more. By lunchtime, Sergio's skepticism had visibly faded. Mihai's careful attention and evident skill with tools had impressed him. When Mihai quickly calculated measurements for a complex cut without writing anything down, Sergio raised his eyebrows. Mathematics, good in any language, eh? Slowly, a routine established itself. Work during the day, English classes 3 evenings a week, foundation meetings on Thursdays. The stipend, combined with his construction wages, allowed Mihai to send a small amount home to his mother. Each night, he fell into bed exhausted, but with a growing sense of stability he hadn't felt since arriving in America. What he didn't expect was the loneliness that persisted despite his improving circumstances. At job sites, language barriers still isolated him from casual conversation. At foundation events, he felt the weight of his debt to Eleanor Blackwell and struggled to relax. The familiar homesickness that had been temporarily overshadowed by basic survival now resurged in quiet moments. 3 months into the program, Eleanor invited Mihai to the foundation's main offices downtown for what she called a check-in. The sleek building with its polished floors and glass walls intimidated him, despite his clean work clothes and newly trimmed hair. Mihai, your progress reports are excellent, Eleanor said after they settled in her warmly furnished office. Sergio says you have exceptional talent for finished carpentry, and Sarah tells me your English has improved remarkably. Thank you, he replied, the words coming more easily now. Foundation has helped very much. The foundation, she corrected gently, has helped very much. The foundation, he repeated. Sorry, no need for apologies. You're doing wonderfully. She studied him. But something's troubling you. Would you like to tell me what it is? The directness of the question startled him. Everything is good, he insisted automatically. Eleanor's gaze remained steady. Mihai, this program isn't just about economic stability. It's about helping people rebuild their lives completely. That includes addressing the emotional challenges of your situation. The kindness in her voice loosened something in his chest. Before he realized what was happening, words began spilling out. I am grateful, so grateful. But I feel, he struggled to find the right English words. Alone, between worlds. Not Romanian anymore. Not American yet. At work, I am the immigrant. At foundation, I am the success story. But nobody sees. Hey, me. Understanding dawned in Eleanor's eyes. You're experiencing the immigrant's dilemma. The in-between space where you belong nowhere and everywhere at once. She leaned forward. Have you made any connections outside of work in the foundation? He shook his head. Then perhaps it's time to expand your community involvement. The volunteer component of your program hasn't started yet, but we could begin early. She tapped her pen thoughtfully against her desk. There's a community center in your neighborhood that runs an after-school carpentry program for teenagers. Many are immigrants themselves. Would teaching interest you? Mihai's immediate instinct was to protest. His English wasn't good enough, he wasn't qualified to teach. But the thought of sharing his skills, of connecting with others who understood the displacement he felt, maybe I could try, he said cautiously. The Riverdale Community Center occupied a former elementary school building. Its brick exterior, weathered but solid. Inside, hallways had been brightened with murals depicting scenes from around the world, a silent acknowledgement of the neighborhood's diverse population. We've been hoping to expand our woodworking program, explained Layla Karimi, the center's program director, as she showed Mihai the workshop space. An Iranian-American with quick movements and a perpetual smile, she spoke with the rapid cadence of someone perpetually short on time. Most of these kids have never had the opportunity to build anything with their hands. Some have behavior issues, difficulties at home, or trouble in school. Working with tools gives them focus, satisfaction, and practical skills. The workshop itself was modest. 8 workbenches, basic hand tools, and a few power tools secured in a locked cabinet. We run on donations and grants, Layla explained apologetically. Not exactly state-of-the-art. Is perfect, Mihai replied, running his hand over a worn workbench. In Romania, I learned with less. His first class began with 4 nervous teenagers eyeing him suspiciously as he introduced himself in his accented English. 2 boys from Somalia, a girl from Laos, and a sullen American boy who slouched in his chair and avoided eye contact. Today we start simple, Mihai explained, holding up a small wooden box. When finished is a good gift or to keep special things. He pointed to different parts, naming them carefully in English, then demonstrated measuring and marking the wood. The session began awkwardly. The teens were hesitant to ask questions, and Mihai struggled to explain concepts clearly. But when he guided the Laotian girl's hands to show her how to safely use a saw, her face lit up with her first successful cut. I did it, she exclaimed, examining the clean edge with wonder. Yes, very good, Mihai affirmed, feeling an unexpected surge of pride. Now help Ahmed with his... By the end of the 2-hour session, each teen had completed the first steps of their box construction. The American boy, Tyler, had remained distant, but Mihai noticed his careful attention to detail, the precision in his measurements. You have worked with tools before? Mihai asked him as the others packed up. Tyler shrugged. My grandpa used to do carpentry. Before he died, he taught you good habits, Mihai said simply. Next week I show special joint technique my uncle taught me. Maybe you help demonstrate? A flicker of interest crossed Tyler's face before the shrug returned. Whatever. Driving home in the used Toyota he'd purchased with his saved wages, another milestone that still filled him with disbelieving pride, Mihai realized he felt lighter than he had in months. Teaching had connected him to something beyond his own struggles, reminding him of afternoons spent learning from his uncle, the satisfaction of creating something lasting with his hands. As weeks passed, the carpentry class expanded to 8 students, then 12. Layla added a second weekly session to accommodate interest. Mihai's English improved through the constant practice of explaining techniques, and his students' growing skills filled him with a sense of purpose he'd been missing. 6 months into the Blackwell Foundation program, Mihai's life had transformed almost beyond recognition. His position at Northland Construction had evolved into a permanent role with Sergio's crew. His apartment, once spare and impersonal, now contained carefully selected furnishings, including a hand-carved shelf he'd made during weekend hours at the community center workshop. Most nights he fell asleep too tired to dwell on homesickness, though he still called his mother weekly, now with increasingly positive news to share. Then came the letter from Romania. His mother's handwriting on the envelope sent a surge of homesickness through him as he collected his mail. Inside, however, the contents froze his blood. His mother's arthritis had worsened significantly. The doctor recommended surgery, but the waiting list for the public health system stretched months into the future. Private care was available, but at a cost far beyond their means. Mihai sat heavily on his sofa, letter clutched in trembling hands. His mother had tried to downplay the severity, but between the lines he read her pain and fear. The modest amounts he'd been sending home were helping with basic expenses, but couldn't begin to cover surgical costs. That night, sleep eluded him as he calculated and recalculated his finances. His savings, while growing, would cover perhaps half the needed amount. Borrowing was risky, As an immigrant with limited credit history, any loans would come with punishing interest rates. Sending all his savings would leave him vulnerable if his own situation destabilized. Morning found him hollow-eyed but resolved. After his shift at Northland, he approached Jim Hargrove's office with reluctant determination. Additional hours? Jim repeated, leaning back in his chair. Mihai, you're already working full-time, plus your foundation commitments and that teaching thing at the community center. I need money, Mihai said simply. For my mother, she is sick. Understanding softened Jim's weathered face. I'm sorry to hear that. How serious is it? Mihai explained the situation, hating the desperation in his voice but unable to mask it. Jim nodded slowly. We don't have much overtime available right now, but he hesitated. I have a friend with a small remodeling business. He's always looking for skilled finish carpenters for weekend work. High-end stuff, good pay. I could put in a word. Please, Mihai said. I would be very grateful. By the following weekend, Mihai had added Saturday shifts with Albany renovations to his schedule. The work was demanding but rewarding, custom built-ins and detailed trim work for luxury homes. The owner, Patrick Albany, paid well and in cash, accelerating Mihai's savings plan. The new schedule left little room for rest. Weekdays at Northland, Saturdays with Albany, evenings split between English classes and the teen carpentry program. Sundays, his only free day, now devoted to laundry, grocery shopping, and catch-up sleep. Dark circles formed under his eyes. His appetite waned. Twice, he caught himself making careless mistakes at work, something that had never happened before. Eleanor noticed the change at their monthly check-in. You look exhausted, she observed, concern evident in her voice. Mihai explained about his mother's condition and his second job. I need $3,000 more, he concluded. Then I can pay for her surgery. Eleanor's brow furrowed. Mihai, your dedication to your mother is admirable, but you're pushing yourself to a breaking point. There are other options we could explore. The foundation has medical assistance programs for participants' families in certain circumstances. Pride stiffened his spine. This is my responsibility. My mother. I understand, Eleanor said gently. But remember that burning yourself out helps no one. You've worked so hard to build stability here. Don't risk it all by damaging your health. Her words echoed in his mind that night as muscle pain kept him from sleep. What if he became ill and couldn't work at all? What if exhaustion led to a serious accident? The thought sent a chill through him. His mother needed him healthy and working, not injured or worse. The following day, reluctantly, he approached Eleanor's office again. I want to learn about the medical program, he said, the words difficult but necessary. Relief crossed her face. I'm glad, Mihai. Let me introduce you to our International Programs Coordinator. The Blackwell Foundation's Family Medical Assistance Program turned out to be a partnership with several international health organizations. For qualifying cases, the foundation would advance medical costs as an interest-free loan, allowing for immediate treatment while establishing a reasonable repayment schedule. Your mother could have surgery next month, explained Diane Lewis, the international coordinator. We work with a network of private clinics in Romania. The foundation covers the initial costs, and you repay at a rate that doesn't create financial hardship. And if I cannot repay? Mihai asked, the question difficult but necessary. The program includes forgiveness provisions for genuine hardship, Diane replied. But based on your employment record and progress in the program, I don't anticipate that being necessary. This isn't charity, Mihai. It's a practical solution that benefits everyone. Your mother gets timely care, you maintain your own stability, and the foundation fulfills its mission. The arrangements progressed with surprising speed. Within 2 weeks, Mihai's mother had an appointment at a private clinic in Bucharest. The surgery was scheduled for the following month. When he called to tell her, he heard something he hadn't heard in months. Relief in her voice. God sent you to America for a reason, my son, she said, her Romanian flowing through the phone line like a balm to his soul. He put good people in your path. It started with $5. Mihai replied, marveling at the chain of events. $5 I almost didn't give. With his mother's surgery arranged and a manageable repayment plan in place, Mihai reluctantly gave up the weekend work with Albany renovations. His body thanked him immediately. The constant fatigue began to lift, his appetite returned, and the tension headaches that had become his constant companion subsided. This newfound energy allowed him to refocus on his carpentry program at the community center. The teens had progressed from simple boxes to more complex projects, bookends, small tables, even a chess set designed by Ahmed, one of the Somali boys. Tyler, the initially reluctant American teen, had blossomed into Mihai's unofficial assistant, demonstrating techniques for newer students and staying late to help clean up the workshop. One evening, as they swept sawdust and reorganized tools, Tyler broke his usual reticence. "My mom says I've changed since I started coming here." "Changed how?" Mihai asked, continuing to sort chisels. Tyler shrugged, the gesture less defensive than it had once been. "She says I'm calmer, more focused. I don't get in trouble at school as much." Mihai nodded. "Working with hands settles the mind. My uncle taught me this." "Is he the one who showed you that dovetail thing?" "Yes. He was very skilled." Mihai hesitated, then added, "He died 2 years ago. Heart attack." Tyler's movement stilled. "My grandpa, the one who did carpentry, he died last year. Cancer." He ran a finger along the edge of the workbench. "Sometimes when I'm working on a project, I can almost hear him telling me what to do next. They live in what we create," Mihai said softly. "This is why making things matters." Tyler nodded, unexpected wetness gleaming in his eyes. He quickly ducked his head and resumed sweeping, but something had shifted between them, a recognition of shared loss, of understanding that transcended age and background. As spring melted into summer, Mihai's life continued its steady improvement. His mother's surgery was successful, her recovery progressing well. Jim Hargrove promoted him to lead carpenter on a historic renovation project, citing his exceptional attention to detail. His English fluency expanded daily, his accent still present, but his confidence growing. But it was the carpentry program that brought him the most unexpected joy. What had begun as a volunteer obligation had evolved into a passion. Layla approached him with a proposal to expand the program into a summer camp format, offering daily sessions during school vacation. "The kids respond to you, Mihai," she explained. "You've built something special here. The foundation's funding commitment ends in 3 months. Would you consider staying on afterward? We could apply for a grant to create a permanent position." The offer caught him by surprise. His year with the Blackwell Foundation was indeed drawing to a close. Soon he would need to move from foundation housing to his own apartment. The thought had been intimidating, but now with steady employment, growing savings, and improved language skills, the transition seemed manageable. "I would like this very much," he replied, realizing the truth of it as he spoke. "Teaching brings me joy." That evening, he walked home through his neighborhood, noting with fresh eyes the details he'd come to take for granted. The Korean grocery with its colorful produce displays, the Ethiopian restaurant where the owner now greeted him by name, the small park where old men played chess regardless of weather. This place that had once seemed so alien now held the comfortable familiarity of home. At his apartment, he found an unexpected envelope in his mailbox. Elegant cream stationery with the Blackwell Foundation letterhead. Inside was an invitation to the Foundation's annual gala, a formal fundraising event held at one of Minneapolis's most prestigious hotels. A handwritten note from Eleanor was paperclipped to the invitation. "Your story is one we wish to highlight this year. Please consider sharing it with our supporters. Formal attire, the Foundation will assist if needed. Adia B." The thought of speaking publicly, in English, before wealthy donors sent a wave of anxiety through him. Yet he recognized the opportunity to give back to the organization that had transformed his life. 2 weeks later, dressed in a rented tuxedo that felt both foreign and oddly dignifying, Mihai stood backstage at the Renaissance Hotel ballroom, heart hammering as Eleanor addressed the assembled crowd of Foundation supporters. "The true measure of our work isn't found in statistics or annual reports," she was saying. "It's found in individual lives transformed. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you to Mihai Popescu, who came to our attention through an extraordinary act of generosity at his moment of greatest need." She gestured toward the wings, and Mihai stepped forward on legs that threatened to betray him. The spotlights blinded him to most of the audience, but he could make out hundreds of faces turned expectantly toward him. He reached the podium, took a deep breath, and began speaking from the heart. "1 year ago, I had $5 to my name," he said, his accent still present, but his words clear and measured. "I was cold, hungry, and afraid. But when I saw someone I thought needed help more than me, I remembered my mother's words. Kindness doesn't empty your hands, it fills your heart." As he continued his story, the test he hadn't known he was taking, Eleanor's intervention, the Foundation's support, his mother's surgery, the teens he now mentored, he watched understanding dawn in the audience's expressions. These wealthy benefactors were hearing firsthand how their contributions created ripples of change that extended far beyond a single life. "The $5 I gave away that day," he concluded, "it was an investment that paid returns I could never have imagined." Now, through the community center, I teach teenagers that their hands can create beauty, that their skills have value, that they belong somewhere. This is how kindness multiplies. This is how $5 becomes immeasurable wealth. The applause that followed was thunderous. Eleanor embraced him as he left the podium, whispering, "Beautifully done, Mihai. Absolutely perfect." Later, as donors mingled over dessert and coffee, a distinguished-looking man approached Mihai. "Thomas Reeves," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Though you might remember me differently." Recognition dawned immediately, the elderly, homeless man from that fateful day. "Mr. Reeves," Mihai replied, shaking his hand firmly. "You look very different without your cardboard sign." Thomas chuckled. "I've been doing Eleanor's kindness tests for 15 years. Rarely do they lead to such remarkable outcomes." His expression grew serious. "I want you to know something, Mr. Popescu. In all my years doing this work, you're one of only 3 people who gave their last dollar. Not their spare change, not money they could afford, their last dollar." He clasped Mihai's shoulder. "That kind of character deserves every opportunity the foundation has provided." The evening concluded with Eleanor announcing that the gala had raised over $2 million for foundation programs, a record amount. As guests departed, she found Mihai collecting his coat. "Your speech inspired unprecedented generosity tonight," she told him. "Several donors specifically mentioned your story when increasing their pledges." "I am honored to help," Mihai replied sincerely. "The foundation gave me much more than assistance. It gave me dignity." Eleanor studied him, her shrewd eyes softening. "You're nearing the end of your formal program year. Have you thought about what comes next?" "Yes," he nodded. "I have saved for apartment deposit. Northland Construction will keep me on permanent. And the community center has offered teaching position. All excellent developments," Eleanor approved. "But I have another proposition for you to consider." She handed him a slim folder. "The foundation is expanding our immigrant assistance programs. We need someone who understands the experience firsthand to help design and implement our new initiatives. Someone with demonstrated character, practical skills, and a genuine desire to help others. Someone like you, Mihai." He stared at the folder, speechless. "It's a full-time position," she continued. "You would work directly with me in our program development team. Your carpentry and construction skills would remain valuable assets for our vocational training initiatives." "But my English," he began, "continues to improve daily," she finished for him. "And your perspective is irreplaceable. Think about it. We can discuss details next week." That night, in the quiet of his apartment, Mihai sat by the window overlooking the city that had become his home. The lights of downtown Minneapolis glittered in the distance, like the promise that had drawn him to America. He thought about the foundation's offer, the opportunity to help others navigate the journey he'd traveled. His phone chimed with a text message from Tyler. "Made that jewelry box for my mom. She cried when I gave it to her. Thanks for showing me how." Mihai smiled, warmth spreading through his chest. "From $5 to this, a life rich with purpose, connection, and the opportunity to multiply kindness." His mother had been right. Giving hadn't emptied his hands. It had filled his heart beyond measure. The next morning, he called Eleanor Blackwell with his decision. The journey that had begun with a desperate act of generosity would continue in ways he could never have imagined, touching lives beyond counting. All because, on a cold Minneapolis day, a poor immigrant had donated his last $5, never suspecting it was a life-changing test of kindness.